Thank you so much, Sarah, and thank you for inviting us to participate on this call today and to provide this information via this webinar. We do greatly appreciate it. Getting Hired is a valued partner of NOD. So before we get started, I do just want to let everyone know that I'll give a little bit of background on NOD. We'll go into talking about our Disability Employment Tracker, which you'll get a little bit of a preview, and then we will talk about why disability matters in the workplace from various different points. There will be videos that are included in this presentation today, but we are not going to show them. That is something that Sarah will go ahead and send out to everyone after. So we are keeping them within the presentation, but they will not actually be shown. You will receive the links to those videos after. And I would like to encourage you at this time to really take a look at those videos because they do add impact to the overall presentation. So I am going to get started here. A little bit about NOD. NOD is a national nonprofit that promotes the full participation and contributions of America's 57 million people with disabilities in all aspects of life. We focus on increasing employment of people with disabilities by setting the standards for top performance by employers and helping them to achieve these. We have a 35-year track record as a leading authority on disability with a board of committed senior corporate leaders and professional staff with decades of experience working with employers, disability organizations, researchers, and policymakers. NOD offers a suite of professional services tailored to meet companies' workforce needs and has helped some of the world's most recognized brands to be more competitive in today's global economy by building or enriching their disability inclusion programs. You can see just a few of those companies here. This is a sample of the companies that we have worked with. I'm sure that many of you on this call probably see your company logo there, but this is a mix of the companies that we have worked with to really help with their disability hiring, as well as various other programs to support their disability inclusion initiatives internally and externally. So moving on. We are now going to talk about our Disability Employment Tracker. Now, this is a free tool that offers your company a quick way to determine your current state of disability as well as veterans performance. The first step to understanding where your company stands today as to where you are with your disability inclusion practice as well as veterans. Now, veterans is separate from the tracker, and you get separate results for that. But it is important to understand that really NOD started a program several years ago, and it was a 3-year demonstration program that was funded through the federal government, and it lasted over 7 years to help our wounded warriors transition from into competitive employment upon their discharge. And that is why we have continued to bring veterans into this conversation. As I said, the tool is completely free. It is confidential. NOD will not disclose that your company enrolled in the tracker, nor will we ever share any of your company's specific scores or responses. The survey was developed by NOD employment experts in partnership with the Biscardi Center and the National Business and Disability Council, as well as input from our corporate leaders. After completing the tracker, you'll receive a benchmarking scorecard measuring your performance in comparison to all companies participating in the 2020 survey across the 5 key inclusion aspects, plus veterans inclusion, allowing you to identify areas of strengths and opportunities to improve. So far in 2020, we have over 120 companies registered to take the tracker, and in 2019, over 210 companies completed the survey. The tracker is offered every year and is refreshed to reflect the evolving needs of employers and the latest leading practices in disability inclusion, gained through hands-on professional services, consulting engagements, working closely with members of NOD's Corporate Leadership Council, and our close observation of the marketplace. In addition to refreshing the questions each year to provide more clarity, we have added questions and answer options on a number of topics, including applicant tracking systems, plans for improving disability inclusion practices, self-ID communications campaigns, and veterans hiring. Companies can re-enroll in the tracker annually to chart their progress year over year and demonstrate advances gained from launching or expanding disability and veterans inclusion initiatives. Typically, the tracker is completed by HR and diversity and inclusion leaders. The 2020 tracker is open now, and you can start today. Just submit your responses by the March 3rd deadline. So if we move on, you can see on this next slide the key aspects that we examine. Some examples of what we look at in each category are for climate and culture. We are looking at things like policies and practices that foster a culture of inclusion, focus on the person, not the disability, your senior leader support and commitment, ERGs, and other engagement activities. For talent sourcing, we want to know, are you setting hiring goals? Are you tapping local talent pools? You work with companies like Getting Hired for job boards, et cetera. Recruitment practices, disability training for recruiters, accessible applications, onboarding procedures, external outreach to candidates with disabilities. So really the entire talent acquisition process we're looking at within that category. People practices include intentional orientation practices that accommodate new hires in all aspects of the employee life cycle, attract, hire, retain, and let's not forget the promotion of our people with disabilities in the workplace. Disability training for managers, staff, mentoring programs, performance reviews are all looked at in this category. Workplace and technology includes a physical and technical environment that not only meets ADA requirements, I do believe that that is table stakes, but also that you are working for all, utilizing universal design principles in all that you do. So you're striving for more than just meeting your compliance requirements. Strategy and metrics, this really is the one area that we see can help you to move forward in your disability inclusion practice, or move your disability inclusion practice forward would be more accurate, because this is all about goals, metrics, and targets. The measurement and reporting of progress against these goals includes disability status tracking, audits of current policies, and plans to improve. And I say this each year when I do this, this presentation for our Corporate Leadership Council members and for others. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's where this happens, is in the strategy and metrics. Do you have a plan? And then we also look at all of those same categories for our veterans employment section. This section is optional. You do not have to complete it, but it is there for you to be able to measure your progress with veterans as well. So if we look at the next slide, you can see after signing up for the tracker, you will receive an email that gives you instant access to begin the survey. There are about 80 questions. The vast majority of these questions are yes, no, don't know. There are also follow-up questions that will appear only if you answer yes to the parent question. So you see this on the slide where question 4, my company tracks the ratio of individuals with disabilities hired to all hires, where if you answer affirmatively, you then are asked to respond to the child question, et cetera. I think everyone understands that. Most participants complete the survey in just a few hours. And if you're interested, you certainly can reach out to us at trackerinfo@nod.org. We are happy to help you with this process, as well as to provide some information to help you to prepare to answer the questions so that you understand which team members may need to be involved in the process. So for 2020, I am providing some examples of new questions that we have added to the survey. As I said earlier, we are constantly striving to ensure that this is a robust tool for our companies to use to understand where they are with their disability inclusion practice. This year, we evaluated our entire survey with the help of the top members of our Corporate Leadership Council, as well as some policy advocates and others working with us in developing the assessment. Some questions that were added are things like, my company has a comprehensive disability strategy that includes policies, process, resource, and accountability. My company solicits feedback from employees about disability inclusion efforts. This is really important, and this is something that we really have come to understand over the last several years of participating with companies in hiring, supporting their hiring engagements, helping them to develop their strategy, and really being able to talk to their employees and see their employees' reactions once they have completed the required training as part of our disability hiring engagements. We do an evaluation, and we have over a 95% completion rate for our evaluations once they have completed them, and 98% of those employees have stated that they do believe that the training is worthwhile, and they are really excited and happy to work for a company that is making this investment in disability inclusion in the workplace. Now, that's feedback that we all want to hear because it really helps us to develop our own internal value proposition. There are some other examples here on the slide that you can certainly take a look at, but in an effort to think about time and move forward, I do want to continue moving on, but there are some additional examples here as well. So if we look at the next slide, this is after you complete the tracker survey, you will receive a free disability employment tracker scorecard. You can expect to receive this in spring 2020, or about 6 to 8 weeks after the March 3rd tracker deadline. Your disability and veteran scorecard includes information about where you stand, but also serves as a snapshot of your company's current disability and veterans performance against others. So for each of the 5 key inclusion aspects, NOD provides a numeric score reflecting your company's performance in that inclusion area, as you see here, as well as a benchmark score showing the average performance of all companies participating in 2020. Use this overview to quickly update senior leaders on where your company stands today and build support for growing or launching initiatives to improve in one or more area of those key inclusion aspects. Now, there are some companies that have said, you know, I just don't want to take this. We're not ready. We're not at a stage right now where we feel like this is something that we could or should complete. And I would argue that, again, it goes back to that if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So this is the opportunity for you to understand where you're starting from and then clearly see where you are able to make gains, where you have strengths, and where you continue to have opportunities for improvement. It's a really great way to start, and it only focuses on the workplace. This is different than other assessments and surveys that are out there in the market because it only focuses on your workplace. Other assessments look at other areas that you may be working on, and you should be working on for disability inclusion. However, this is all about your workplace. For each key inclusion aspect examined, you'll also find recommended leading practices from NOD's employment experts to help you advance. And that's what you see in that middle section on this slide here. If we move forward to the next, you can see the scorecard excerpt. Now, this is a record of your responses. And for companies that are re-enrolling, we'll provide your year-over-year response trend, documenting your record of improvement. Again, so you can clearly see where you are, where you've come from, where you're moving to. Finally, the scorecard shows trends drawn from the aggregate and anonymized data of all participating companies. So as you move through the tracker, when you receive the link to log in to see your results, the first thing that you see is that the scorecard that I just showed you. Then you move into the actual questions and responses so that you can see your year-over-year progress with those with how you have responded. And then it will work into that aggregate data, showing you things like different types of industries, the companies in the different industries that have participated, et cetera. So how do you use your tracker scorecard? What's a good way to look at this? So as I have said a couple of times now, you can use the scorecard tear sheet to build internal buy-in and support for your disability and veterans inclusion agenda. It shows clearly where you are and gives you best practices to really help to build on. You can demonstrate your advancement and recognize internal disability and veterans inclusion efforts. Benchmark your performance against your peers to understand how you compare to the competition, and understand the critical success factors in disability employment by looking at where you are in comparison to others, it really helps us to understand how we can move forward with perhaps increasing our self-identification rate. What do we need to do? What are other companies doing to help that? We also will schedule a call with the companies that complete our tracker. Each year, we provide about 45 minutes for companies that are not members of our Corporate Leadership Council to go through your results and talk through some of those best practices. We can certainly help you to understand what low-hanging fruit you may have based on your results, where your strengths lie, how to capitalize on those strengths, as well as really where you may continue to have some gaps in what other companies have done to really close those gaps. For federal contractors, it helps you to demonstrate that you're taking those tangible steps toward Labor Department employment targets, goals, and requirements. And then each year you gain the additional value, or you can gain the additional value of taking a deeper dive into your tracker data with NOD's Disability Inclusion Executive Briefing, which we certainly can give you more information on if you are interested. At the end, there will be an email address that you can certainly email, and I'm happy to respond. So, some other benefits. What's more, by completing the tracker, you can opt to be considered for NOD's 2020 Leading Disability Employment Seal, which allows your company to enhance your brand in the broad marketplace as a preferred disability employer. So again, the entire life cycle, helping us to attract, hire, retain, and promote people with disabilities, and being recognized as a company that understands that value. Consideration for the seal is optional. You do not have to opt in, and it is confidential. Again, your company's specific responses and scores are not shared. Companies who opt in for consideration but don't earn the seal will not be shared. So there's no downside to trying this for recognition. I'm sure that some of you on the call are also Diversity Inc. respondents and know that the tracker is a requirement for the top 50 companies for diversity. You will have the opportunity to opt in, so Diversity Inc. will be informed that you have completed the tracker, but no scores or specific data are shared. So start today. I'm going to move forward. The information is here. It takes about 2 hours, confidential and free. And if you have any questions, you can certainly email us at tracker@nod.org. So we are going to move into why disability matters. I'm sure there are several of us, many of us on this call, that do understand completely why disability matters in the workplace, but others, I think it's really important for us to understand how we can begin to build the value proposition internally for our members of our senior leadership team, members of our talent acquisition team, whoever that might be, that you need a little bit of extra help with and bringing them along with understanding that this is the largest untapped talent pool in the United States, most certainly, as well as globally. So, disability as an element of diversity. 20% of people with disabilities are born with their disability, while 80% of us acquire that disability as the result of age, illness, or injury. Now, some of us can certainly identify with that. As I currently have a hearing impairment that I wear double hearing aids for. I have had other things that have really come with aging. I'm 52 years old this year, so full disclosure, which could be considered young by many for some of these things. But it's a result, I have acquired these disabilities. I was not born with them. People who are born with their disability may be more comfortable. It's what they've known their whole life. It's part of who they are as a person. For others, their disability may be new to them, and they could be anywhere on the continuum of adjusting to a new way of life. Any one of us on this call, as I said, due to aging, illness, or injury, can join this group at any time in our lifetime. I think that, and we like to say it's one of the only diversity categories that you can join at any time. Those things are changing, rapidly changing, as we know. But again, these are just some thoughtful, it's thoughtful information for you to take back when you look at disability as part of our entire diversity and inclusion strategy that the intersectionality of disability is undeniable. It touches every single one of these categories. Now, disability statistics in the U.S., employment rates have remained virtually unchanged. Recently, there has been some positive movement in the employment of people with disabilities. However, the labor force participation rate and unemployment rate for people with disabilities have remained virtually unchanged for decades, even 30 years after the passage of the ADA. So yes, this year, it is the 30th anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act. We need to do more. This pool of employees will become increasingly important to business as we see the large baby boomer generation retire. Fewer candidates are entering the labor market. There are simply just fewer of us as our population continues to decline. There's fewer of us entering the labor market. Furthermore, autism affects 1 out of every 68 children in the U.S., depending on the study that you look at. That number is even lower, representing a large segment of our future workforce. So employers need to prepare for this next generation of employees. Employers may want to consider putting policies and practice in place to support their employees who may not be disabled themselves, but who may be caring for children, spouses, or parents who are. Labor pool will become increasingly important to business as baby boomers retire. As I said, 84 million total population of American disability community plus their family and friends. 2.4 trillion disposable income of U.S. disability community plus their family and friends. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. We move to the next slide. Why disability matters from a talent acquisition prospect. So talent acquisition is an ongoing process for attracting, sourcing, recruiting, and hiring employees. It includes employment branding, outreach, networking, and relationship building, and potential candidate communities to continually build and enhance the talent pool for an organization. One of the most important functions a business can have is identifying and selecting employees who possess the necessary skills and who can contribute to the success of our business. Now, historically, one of the most important functions we do is to look at who can we bring in at any given time? Who are we starting with, whether they're college students or recent graduates, veterans, older workers, newly diagnosed, or they've had their disability since birth, whether their disability is apparent or not, and whether they need accommodations or not. People with disabilities should be part of the talent acquisition strategy. We have seen that we absolutely must look at those untapped talent pools that we have not looked at for years. We have known that this talent gap was coming. We knew that it was happening, and we chose really not to act on it for certain reasons for our own businesses that made sense to us as a business. But now it is time for us to look at those untapped talent pools and move forward. Why it matters for high-performing employees. Research and anecdotal information consistently tells us that people with disabilities make good employees. Many businesses that employ people with disabilities report reduced turnover, increased loyalty, and increased morale and productivity of other employees. I talked about that a little bit earlier. When we have been working with our clients and talking with them and with their employees, employers are really excited about this. They're really excited. We had one facility where we had 140 employees volunteer to be buddies and mentors to people with disabilities being hired into their workplace to help them navigate the workplace and understand how to be successful. 140 employees out of 600. That's a pretty good ratio. And that shows, again, that our employees will rise to the level of our expectations, and they do want to and understand disability once we can provide them with the information. Studies show that employees with disabilities were just as dependable and productive as employees without disabilities and had nearly identical job performance ratings. This is a DePaul study that we are citing here, but there are other studies that have been done that you may be more familiar with that also showed that very few reasonable accommodations are needed, and job accommodations, when provided, played a vital role in facilitating employment whether individuals had a pre-existing disability or were returning to work following an injury or illness. Now, this next slide is, as I said, it's one of the videos that I wanted to share today from EY. They're a top member of our Corporate Leadership Council, really are seen as one of the gold standards for disability employment. And this Kyle video is fantastic. I really hope that you do have some time to watch it once you receive the link, because I do think it's very impactful. Transgender, as well as is on the autism spectrum. They are on the autism spectrum. So why it matters for current employees. Telling an employer about a disability is the only way to protect an individual's legal right to any accommodation they might need to get or keep a job. However, revealing a disability may subject someone to misperception, possibly discrimination, which could limit opportunities for employment and advancement. This is the one greatest challenge, or one of the greatest challenges, people with disabilities in the workforce may face in their employment history. When we think about self-identification and disclosure, self-identification is when, and this is just a little bit of background, historically we think of this as when someone chooses to check the box on one of our application forms or during the application process, right? They are self-identifying as a person with a disability. Disclosure is the actual conversation that we must have with our employer, our hiring manager, recruiter, etc., to ask for an accommodation, to alert our employer that we do in fact have a disability that we may require an adjustment. And for people with visible disabilities, it's self-disclosure and it's self-identification and disclosure all wrapped into one. So whether we're walking in or we're wheeling in to an interview, we want to be sure that it's a level playing field, and that for new employees, but for current employees as well. Because again, think about that. 83% of disabilities are the result of age, illness, or injury. So we are going to have this in the workplace. And it is of the utmost importance that we understand how to manage that and how to help our people continue to be successful in the workplace, given the challenge that we have with attracting new employees because the workforce is declining. So really important for us to work through this as a business. According to the Job Accommodations Network study, there is the Job Accommodations Network, which is askjan.org, is a fantastic resource for business to use. They do an ongoing study of accommodations in the workplace, and this study shows that of the employers who contacted JAN, 82% did so to retain or promote a current employee, and that on average, employees had been with the company for 7 years, including those who had just been given a job offer or who were newly hired. So again, they're not skewing the results by throwing those new employees out. And that they had an average wage of $15 for those paid by the hour, $15 an hour, or an average annual salary of about $50,000. In addition, 54% had a college degree or higher. So it's ultimately very important for us to understand those statistics, and that we are utilizing these resources for our current employees to understand how to work with our current employees. And then here's the average cost. So 57% of accommodations were made at no cost. 36% experienced a one-time cost, typical cost $500. 4% resulting in an ongoing annual cost to the company. You can read through the rest of this, but it is, again, the Job Accommodation Network is doing this study. It's been over, this study shows, I think, the last 9 years, showing the average cost, but they consistently come in at this rate. So important, again, to focus on what we can do to help people to be successful. Now, in my previous employment, I come from the business sector. I worked for Manpower Group as their National Access to Ability Leader and Government Solutions Executive. And one of the things that was really important for all of us to understand in trying to work through this process of identifying both internal and external resources to help with disability hiring initiatives was thinking about the cost associated with making an adjustment and calling an accommodation, changing really the perception of an accommodation, which was associated with kind of these larger sums of money. An accommodation is, you know, I have to install a ramp, et cetera, to an adjustment, a workplace adjustment where I need a new chair, or I might need a desk that can move up and down, et cetera. You get the idea. But again, building a value proposition behind these items that are mostly low cost in order to help our employees. Key workforce metrics. 1/3 of managers, state employees with disabilities have 30% greater tenure and are 35% more dedicated to their work. So SHRM states that the average cost to replace an employee is approximately 30% of salary and benefits. So if you assume a salary of $40,000, it costs approximately $12,000 to replace an employee, you lose. So we really want to do everything that we can to hold on to our employees. And I think I'm probably speaking the language of many of us on this call right now, coming from HR and recruitment, et cetera. We don't want to go through this entire journey of recruiting employees only to have them fall off and have to pay the cost to replace that employee. We ultimately want to have a good employee that's going to stay, and that's what we see with people with disabilities. This is another video that I have. It is from the UPS workforce development program that they have developed over the course of the last several years. Again, I would encourage people to go ahead and look at this video when you have the opportunity. And now we're going to move into customers. So people with disabilities and their personal networks are highly loyal consumers of organizations that hire people with disabilities. U.S. Census Bureau. I think we all have come to have a greater understanding of that. But if we see on this slide, we can see excellent examples of disability inclusion, and I think everyone is familiar with the wonderful work that Target does in representing people with a wide variety of disabilities in their advertising. This one happens to show a young girl that has leg braces. I think we've probably all seen the ones with the little girl or the little boy with Down syndrome. They've shown ones with, they've shown women with prosthetics, et cetera. So they do a great job for representation. But we also see Charter Communications Spectrum guides here in the left-hand corner. This is their flagship TV product. It's unique because it has a text-to-speech engine built into it. That means a person who is blind or with a visual disability can use the TV interface without someone sitting next to them and without any serious instruction. They can use a traditional remote control to do it. So there are also some other fantastic products on this slide developed by Charter Spectrum, whose mission in their design accessibility program is to ensure every product on the market is accessible for all of their users. But perhaps what is most important is the next box that we see on this slide in the right corner shows people with various disabilities, which is the actual team responsible for the building, designs, and testing products at Charter Spectrum. They have embedded these individuals across their product organization. A person with disabilities with strong technical knowledge is sitting next to a designer or a developer or tester. Now, we had the opportunity to hear directly from them at our Corporate Leadership Council meeting a few years ago, and we have continued to work very closely with Charter Spectrum. They sit on our Corporate Leadership Council. They're a member of our Corporate Leadership Council, and they continue to be a strong supporter of ours. But ultimately, they bake accessibility into everything they do. And I like to equate this to just like baking a blueberry muffin. It's hard to add the blueberries after you baked the muffin. So in their words, remediation is extremely expensive. If you do everything in the right order and build accessibility early in the practice, you end up with a perfect product. and it's not that much more expensive to build an accessible product if you do it from the beginning. Now, here are some fantastic statistics for us to just take a look at. So now, we talk about and to people with disabilities easily. Let's dig in to the why this group should matter to you and your business as far as emerging global markets are concerned and really the marketplace in general. Here's some more stats that you should know but probably don't, or maybe you do, but it helps us to, again, build that internal value proposition. We're thinking about building our recruitment, our HR strategies to be inclusive of people with disabilities. It really does tend to be about the bottom line for us and being able to show value. So the global population of people with disabilities is 1.1 billion. Their friends and family add another 1.9 billion potential consumers that act on their emotional connection to people with disabilities, making disability a bigger market than even China. Together, they control over $9 trillion in annual disposable income. In fact, the U.S. disability market population is actually 3 times the size of the U.S. Hispanic market, which is targeted heavily by business seeking to carve out market share. Customers with disabilities will purchase products and services from companies that best understand and meet their needs. It's clear that companies who appeal to the disability market can potentially unlock huge returns. So, it is a winning strategy. It makes a difference in the lives of individuals with disabilities. It's good business for employers, and it also elicits a very positive consumer response in society, helping to build our brand. So, I'd like to open it up. We do have quite a bit of time for questions, so I would love to open it up now, Sarah, for questions. And I do know that you will be mediating that process for us.
Yes, absolutely. I do have a couple questions to start with. A reminder to anyone who's on the line, if you want to enter any additional questions you have through the chat box, please feel free to do so. And Felicia, first and foremost, I want to thank you for all the information. I think those are some pretty powerful statistics when you are talking about the market being larger than China. I think that's a really great perspective to share. I want to take it back to the tracker because it sounds like everything that you shared in terms of the business case for hiring people with disabilities, ways in which we can be more inclusive in our actions and efforts within organizations. The tracker can help us to identify what areas we need to focus on for all of that and how we can be inclusive. So in starting with the tracker, especially if this is your first year doing it or if you haven't done it before, can you summarize again, what departments would you recommend somebody just notifying that they should be ready to participate in this? Would you say it's talent acquisition and leadership, a certain level of leadership and above, and HR? Would you say it's mainly HR that's going to complete this? Who should be ready to participate in completing this, the tracker?
That is such a great question, and it really is about this cross-functional team, right, that we all know, particularly with larger organizations, we may not know what other departments are doing at any given time around disability inclusion. So I do think ultimately it's very important to have your HR department. Whenever we're going through this and we're talking through companies, we always say you need to go back to HR. It's the first place to start. And if you have questions, you want to ensure that you are including your human resources professionals. Ensuring talent acquisition is a part of that conversation in order to understand what you may be currently doing from talent acquisition. So again, one of the questions is, are you working with a job board or a service like Getting Hired? Right? Now, you may not know that if you're in diversity and inclusion, perhaps. If you're newer to this, if you haven't had the opportunity, again, this is your first time filling out the assessment. So you want to be sure talent acquisition is involved, HR is involved, diversity and inclusion also has things that they are doing. leadership, your senior leadership team may be at the management level, so senior managers, a senior manager is involved in the process, as well as if you run into those questions that you just are unsure of as an organization, whether or not you share this information, you do want to be sure that you have a member of your legal team that you can easily identify as a resource to help you to work through those. Not many of us do need to have a representative of our legal team in order to complete the assessment. It's not necessary, but there are times, particularly from a federal contractor standpoint, where you may have some questions about the information that you're sharing, and it's always nice to have your legal team weigh in. So it is really important to have that cross-functional team that you know who are the members that you can reach out to easily.
That's really helpful to know. And I think I would echo the same message that you just gave. When it comes to disability inclusion and achieving that within an organization, you have to have communication across all of your various departments. Marketing has to work with talent acquisition. You have to work with HR. We even say even loop in employee resource groups or business resource groups, specifically for people with disabilities or veterans or caregivers, because that is a resource that you have internally to turn to for feedback, and especially from people who are living as either somebody with a disability or as a veteran or veteran with a disability already. And they may be able to tell you, from my perspective personally, here's what the organization could do. So that's another great resource to turn to.
I love that, Sarah. Thank you so much for saying that about the ERGs, because it really is important to understand how to activate that network, because they are such a precious resource internally for us to go to, and they really are keeping a beat on what's happening within the organization as it relates to their specific area of expertise and area of interest and advocacy. So thank you.
Absolutely. And Felicia, just on the topic of ERGs, because I know that this is one area that a lot of disability trackers ask about, and even diversity and disability awards that organizations can apply for, they ask about ERGs. And there are some, I feel like, resources talking about ERGs, or some articles, or even organizations that we've even spoken to who have mixed feelings about ERGs and BRGs, and saying that they might create more of an exclusive feel than an inclusive feel, and especially if somebody fits into multiple diversity demographics or categories. So if you're a veteran with a disability, but those are two separate ERGs, you now have to participate in two separate ERGs. So I was just wondering what your thoughts were in the consultation that you all provide to employers as well on the overall value still of ERGs. Do you still hear and find that employers are creating ERGs specifically for people with disabilities, and are they finding success through those within their organization, and even from maybe getting inspiration from taking the NOD tracker and creating one in response to that? Are they finding an improvement within the inclusion in their organization?
Absolutely. You know, it really, and we have seen, and I have experienced that you know, what you're talking about, Sarah, as far as, you know, well, is it exclusionary? Is it not really creating an environment of inclusion? And one of the things that we talk about at NOD is ensuring that you're not just operating in a silo, that while the intersectionality of disabilities specifically, again, as I said earlier, is undeniable. But when we look at the intersectionality of the other diversity categories that we have, ensuring that you're not only meeting as your own group, but that you have time to meet together with other ERGs and the other ERG members within your organization to talk about what your overall goals are for the company in order to help to really promote and enrich, enhance, and move forward together the company culture and whatever those goals are. So yes, there do tend to be some companies that are asking, you know, should we continue with this? But I just spoke recently at the end of the year at a very large employer's a business resource group national conference. It is their first conference that they had. And they are really seeing a return on investment for those groups, bringing innovation to the table, working together to really build on company culture and increasing inclusion overall for the company. So definitely there's still a lot of value, but I would say, it's not just about people with disabilities, but it's about our allies and caretakers, ensuring many companies start with ally groups for people with disabilities, because again, it goes back to the challenge of self-ID and disclosure, but ensuring that everyone is included in making it open for them.
Absolutely, and that actually leads me to my last question, and just talking about how the tracker and conversations with NOD may spark the idea of creating an ERG, or may help employers improve in that area if they already have them within their organization. Are there any other top categories for what employers are trying to focus on or improve upon within their organization for disability that sparks them to take the tracker and that they've been able to find the most improvement in? So for example, if I'm an organization and we're reflecting on the inclusion within our company and feel that, hey, we want higher self-ID rates, how do we do that? Is there an additional resource that we can turn to help us identify what areas we need to focus on? Or maybe taking the tracker is sparked by the thought that we need a better accommodation process. Each of those categories that kind of holistically creates a good disability inclusive environment. Are there certain ones that you've gotten feedback on from employers on, hey, this is the reason why we decided to participate in the tracker, and we were able to find that, yes, it has actually helped us improve in that area as well?
Really, there are a couple of categories when we look at the key metrics and how things are being measured with the tracker. And our company feedback and what we really have been able to extrapolate from the tracker over the last 6 years of data that we have is that strategy and metrics and climate and culture are the two categories that companies need the greatest assistance on from when you're just starting, right? We have our NOD disability employment maturity curve, which starts at exploration, goes to compliance, then competence, then competitive advantage. And how do we get there, right? How do we go from exploration to competitive advantage? And those two categories are really great reasons, and the reasons that companies have used when they have stated, we really decided to try the tracker to look at these categories to really clearly understand. From a talent sourcing prospect, we know what we're doing, right? We can clearly see that we are doing the outreach for talent. We can see people practices. We've made those, some of the changes, as far as our practices are concerned. We've reviewed them, et cetera. But we really continue to struggle with climate and culture and strategy and metrics. It can sometimes be the biggest challenge for companies to put in place the tools that we need in order to measure our progress. So when we think about not only just self-ID, right, having someone measuring that progress in itself, just that one category, but then when we try to break that down and we see what are the number of people with disabilities that we have hired and up against our non-disabled peers. What does that number look like? How does that number break down? How does the number break down as it relates to what we see when people are self-identifying? Is there that cross-sectionality that we talk about? Can we measure that? Can we report that out in aggregate to help our employees understand why this is important to us as a company? And we look at all of these categories together. That piece of it, of being able to really measure and put the strategic tools in place to help us to do that, can be a challenge. So when you look at some of the questions that we have in the tracker, to really help you, would like to look at each question as a best practice, right? So it's over 80 questions that are based on those leading and best and emerging practices that companies are using to really not only, to bring yourself from exploration to competitive advantage. So in each of those categories, you can really break it down and get some great ideas on, this is really where we need to focus and that's what we see. So if you are, if you look at the tracker scorecard when you first get that, and you see that you are outperforming, right? The benchmark for 2019 is 59 in talent sourcing, and you're in the 90s. You're looking at your people practices. The benchmark for 2019 was 47, and you're 61. You're doing fantastic. But then when you look at climate and culture, the 2019 benchmark was 58. If you're at a 47, you can clearly see that that is where you need to focus your attention next. Same thing with strategy and metrics. If the benchmark is 44, which is what it was in 2019, and you're at a 30 or lower, or not even close to being at that 44, you know you have work to do there, and that's where you can focus your resources.
Super helpful. Thank you for summarizing all of that. And one last question about the tracker is, are you able to go in and out of the tracker, or do you have to complete it all at once?
Oh, no, you absolutely can go in and out. You can save your responses as you go.